This is EdTech, the monthly look at the education segment of the AV industry. My name is Tom Albright. I am your host. With us, as always, Mr. Greg Brown from UCLA. Hello, sir.
Hello, Tim. Hello, world.
Hello, world. How are you, sir?
Doing just fine.
Very good.
Live and well. Although it's not sunny here today, I'm sorry.
It is here, so
Not here.
I stole your sunshine. That voice there is Mr. Ernie Bailey.
We'll steal your football team.
Yeah, that's fine. You are going to. UAMS, how are you, sir?
I'm doing just fine.
And what Greg is of course talking about is that the St. Louis Rams are going to go back to LA here in about 5-10 minutes. So
It beat the hell out of us getting the Raiders.
well, it's
So can you blame us?
No, I can't. And last but not least, Mr. Mike Tomei from Tomei AV Consulting. How are you, sir?
Good, Tim. How you doing?
Doing well. All right, so this month is going to be, we're getting ready for InfoComm. All of us are doing that, and we're going to cover a couple stories here about that very thing and a couple other upcoming events. But first, let's get to some interesting things, and this is something that I've at least been watching for a while, and have actually asked a couple of different control manufacturers about this very issue. It's a white paper from our buddies over at AMX, and it's basically called Hackers in the Classroom, How to Secure Your AV Systems from Internal and External Threats. I don't know if you guys remember this a few years ago. There was a story out about the StuckNet virus, and it was a physical virus. They supposedly the CIA or somebody in the government put on a flash drive, got into some Iranian nuclear facilities, and it was a big rigmarole. And at that time, I had on somebody from one of the control companies, and I said, "Is this an issue? Right? Is this not StuckNet specifically, but is this an issue for control systems? Do we have to start worrying about this the more and more that we have control systems on the network?" And it's like, "Oh no, nobody wants to. Who wants to hack a processor, right? Who wants to hack an AV system? What are you gonna do? Make the screens go up and down?"
Yep.
Well, with that in mind,
Famous last words.
Exactly. I very interestingly, with much interest, read this white paper. So, Greg, we're going to start with you, since you are in the land of 10,000 IT departments, and I'm certain you have one or
Only
two.
34 at last
34
count.
IT departments.
Not 10,000.
Is it? I mean, what do we need to do to secure our systems, honestly, when it comes to classrooms?
I think the big one and the easy one is, be on your own VPN. Be on a network that the world can't get into easily. I think that's becoming pretty much, by default. Although, you talk to 10 different colleges, you'll get 10 different answers as far as how to do this. As of just a year or two, one of the big local UCs didn't have authentication on, all their data lines were open for the most part, and you're just inviting trouble at that point if people can get in and snoop around and get to things. Even VPN largely protects you from that. I mean, we went through a phase here with it's a little bit off the subject, but we went through a phase of the IT folks doing security scans on our equipment, which can give you all sorts of grief and problems. But in the process of that, one day they gave us a printout of all the things that had pinged our network over like the last 12 hours or something like that. And it was amazing, all of these IP addresses that literally went back to, if you followed them, went back to North Korea and China and stuff like that, trying to ping our subnets. And it's like, man. So, yeah, I mean, everybody should read that. I think it was a really good primer, and covered things reasonably well. Maybe quite a bit of PR for AMX in there, but VPNs are the big one.
Okay, well, let me ask you this: does that not preclude you from from asset management software like RMS or like Fusion or Global Viewer?
We do that all in-house. Now, if you're doing it in-house, no, it doesn't, because you can set up, like, for example, our subnet here in our main building can talk to the subnets out there in the classroom buildings. Now, if you were doing our control and monitoring, or our monitoring and like lamps for us or something like that, yeah, that can be a little bit of an issue, and I think there are some hoops you can jump through to make it work. But it is you're setting up subnets that, in most cases you can't get to from out of campus. Some cases you do, depending on what sort of requirements you've got like that.
And then there's also you could set up a dedicated, secured, you know, connection somewhere.
Exactly.
All right, Ernie, from your standpoint, where do we go to secure our systems, and what do we need to do?
Well, we require authentication through our campus network to get to our systems. We create a network in each room, and then I just have one connection from that room going back to the campus network. That's how we do our remote management, and any other tools that we need to use to get in, we can take that pathway. But we do require authentication for users, and I feel secure about it, knowing the type of security that the campus has, with all the HIPAA requirements, with us being a health science campus. I have not had any instances of anyone getting to my systems, but my people off campus can get to them even without VPNing in. They're still able to get an authenticated login, and so they can quickly get to a room if they're called at night. It keeps me from having to have a technician on site all the time. I have had one hack. It was about 3 semesters ago, and this was an interesting one. It wasn't actually hacking into my control systems or anything like that, but apparently we had a student, we never could identify them, that was able to match the frequency of the PowerPoint remote control that we had in the room. And they would advance slides on one instructor, advance, go back, and we couldn't find it happening, but we monitored the computer while they were doing it, and it was getting, the receiver was getting a pulse from somewhere to tell it to advance. We took it away from the instructor, it would still happen. If she had to go over and hit the keyboard, it would still happen. It was not built into her slides or anything, but like I said, if she wasn't lecturing, it did not happen in the room. Even if she gave her slides to someone else because she was sick, they could give the presentation no issue. So, we pretty much decided we had a student who was really messing with this instructor. But that's the most serious hack we've had in our systems, in our classrooms. Physical safety was also mentioned in this article, and we used to see thefts on, we would count back in the VCR and DVD player days where they were on carts. We counted on losing 2 of them between Thanksgiving and Christmas each year. We know they got wrapped up and put under a tree somewhere. But we actually at one point worked it into our budget that we were going to buy 2 more in January every year, and that worked pretty well. I have had a couple of projectors stolen, but it's been probably 7 or 8 years since anybody tried that. We secure them when we mount to the ceiling. I don't want to tempt fate or give anyone the temptation to come steal my stuff, so I'm not going to say it's not stealable.
Yeah.
But we do have cameras monitoring all hallways. We monitor the equipment in the classrooms through remote management tools, so we know when something's disconnected. And we'll get an email at night or whatever if something goes offline, and we can check it quickly.
Well, and that's the nice thing about remote management systems and
Right.
and stuff like that. So, all right, Mr. Tomei, we've had two different solutions to this. So consult us, Mr. Consultant. You've got a physical separate VPN, which is one way to do it. Ernie's got authentication, which is obviously another way to do it. If you were building this from scratch, what would you do?
Well, it sounds stupid, but change your passwords and default logins on all the equipment. I've seen so many integrators walk away from installs, leaving all of the default usernames and passwords there, and on every piece of equipment. And
Well, that's a good thing, because if they were to change them, probably most of your integrators would forget to give them to you when they leave.
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, they wouldn't give you a list.
So consider yourself lucky.
Right, exactly.
All,
But I've seen that happen so many times. Media players too.
Wait, hang on.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to put in a plug for one of my integrators on that. It's been a while since they've done work for me, but a system they did for me about 5 years ago, we ran into some issues where we didn't have passwords. I called them up. They gave me a link. They have a website set up for me. They do for every one of their clients, and they told me how to log into it. And I have a password. I didn't realize I had that. It's got all the drawings, and it has every password, every IP address that they set up when they did it, and a record of all the maintenance.
Wow.
And I was unaware they did that, but it gave me a good feeling of security, and it helped our engineer who was having to go back and try to look at some programming. All the programming code was there and available for us to look at. So,
Yep. I think another problem in the classrooms is with installed PCs or Macs, installed computers, professors coming in, logging into their personal account for class, and then forgetting to log out when they leave. I've seen that happen a lot, and their shared network storage is totally accessible to whoever walks in and uses that PC next. So I've seen that happen too. That's always a big hole in the security there.
We've actually had people coming around in the mornings just looking for a computer that was still online because somebody had left their login active.
Uh-huh. Yep. I guess I've been lucky. I've never really dealt with any sort of hacking of control systems or AV equipment in classrooms. It's always been physical theft that I've had to deal with of equipment, but not really hacking issues. So, but I do love the clip art they used for this article. The guy in the ski mask using a laptop.
Very
So.
clip art. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be honest here. They've got the guy at the ski mask. They got the guy with the hoodie, looking a little bit like the Unabomber. You know.
Yeah.
If you don't remember who the Unabomber is, kids, look him up on Wikipedia. So.
It gave it kind of a K through 12 look, but I guess this is largely intended for IT people.
yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah. It would be Greg Brown at UCLA.edu.
Yeah, right. There you go.
It's been a week or two since I got any hate mail. You know what? The heck.
All right. Let's actually bring in somebody out Greg's way. I almost said from the California court system, but she's no longer from that. She started her own deal. Her name's Jennifer Willard. Started and head of Women in AV. This comes to us by way of AV Network, and it's interesting. Jennifer was one of the few non-tech managers, non-education tech managers on the Tech Managers Council when Greg was the fair head of that fine organization, wasn't she?
She has been largely the one active non higher ed person for a number of years on the council.
So, and just like me, she's no longer on it because we're no longer tech managers. So there you go. 3 hazards of year-end procurement. I loved this because, well, I lived it for a long time, and Ernie and Greg still live it. There's 3 points that she points out, and we're going to start with Ernie and see if she's right and see if he wants to add anything to it. First of all, there's no time because, well, you've got, when I worked at Lewis and Clark, you had, you got your budget in, July 1, and you had to have stuff in by July 2. There's very few scopes of work, and the integrators love to sell you the bleeding edge stuff because, well, that's where the higher margins are. Ernie, what's some of the things, either whether that she's right or wrong, or some things to add to it?
Well, I think she's completely right. When this time of year, I mean, I'm getting calls from departments that have leftover money, and they want to get an AV system purchased and installed in their classroom by the end of June, the end of our fiscal year. And, I'm basically saying, here, It's about what it's going to cost. Here are 3 vendors. You're on your own. I said, just let it, keep us in the loop so we know who's installing it, so we can come back and make everything right to match the rest of the campus when we have time. But our summer is booked installing our classrooms. I did get a deal from our division that they found some money, enough to do another classroom, if I could get everything delivered by the end of June. So we're working on that right now. Trying to make that happen, getting guarantees from our suppliers. And I don't want to buy, on the third one, I don't want to buy bleeding edge technology for our classrooms. I don't mind getting it into our lab, letting us play with it and see if that's what we want to use. But I'm not going to take something brand new and just throw it in a classroom without testing it. So that's not going to happen on my campus anyway.
Well, and this is a good time to remind folks, if you've not listened or watched, Ernie has what I think is one of the coolest things on campus. He mentioned his lab. They have a mock-up classroom. It's an actual live classroom. Teachers teach in it. And if I'm not mistaken, Ernie, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are some instructors who actually ask for that classroom because you guys do the bleeding edge technology in there.
Exactly. We will throw things in there. The room is not in a good location for a classroom. It's not close to any other classroom or anything. It used to be the worst classroom on campus. And it's not far from my office, so it's easy for us to provide support for if we need to. It's halfway between my office and our support desk, so they can quickly run around there if they need to. But it's because of its lack of popularity over the years, it's easy for us to be able to block it off for 3 to 5 days and put something new in there, or rewrite the control code for that room. If we want to try to add some features or change the look of something, we can take the room down, we can rebuild it, and then put people in there. And most of the people in there know we're going to do that and know they're going to get quick support if they need it. But that's the first room we had HD video conferencing in. We were trying some new cameras. We put them in that room. Everyone liked them. We're putting them in everywhere now. First place we tried, some of the wireless receivers such as Apple TV and Air Media and Google Chrome, those type things. That's where we try those out, make sure they're going to work. First place we put in some of Crestron's light switches, to see if we could really control them and how our system interface with them. And we've had 98% of things have been successful in that room, and then we'll begin rolling it out after we know how it works and how we're going to make it work.
Well, and like you said, the 2% that doesn't work, they get that going in, right? They get that they're an alpha and beta testers. So
right.
All right, Mr. Tomei, take a look at that article there, and let's not only from your experience, but also from consulting other clients. Where do you think she hit the nail, and maybe one or two other things that are some trouble areas for people to avoid as we end one fiscal and get into another one?
Yep, so I think she hit the nail on the head, because I'm actually living it right now with a client. I have one of these projects where they came to me and have to absolutely rush through everything because they need to spend this money, and the needs analysis phase is totally suffering. They need to blow through that as fast as they can so they could get a scope of work and equipment list out to an integrator and get things ordered and then get them installed in time. So I'm kind of slamming the brakes on everything, saying, look, you're going to blow through this needs analysis phase. You're not going to get the system that you really need, and just because you have to spend this money so quickly. So I'm totally living it as we speak, and I think she nailed that one. I totally agree with the scope of work. I feel like there are a lot of scope of work documents that are written that aren't good at all and don't have all the details the integrators need. And if they're vague, those integrators will fall back on those vague scope of work documents when the whole thing comes crumbling down during install time, and the integrator has to say, well, you didn't tell us this, this, and this is your problem. So I feel like writing a good standards document for your campus is a good way to not forget what to put in your scope of work documents. You don't have to, you can kind of tack on your standards document, and you're not going to forget all the details that will eventually totally come back to bite you when it's install time. So I think she really nailed this one pretty well.
Is there something you could do? This is just a weird question, kind of a little off topic. Is there something you can have ready as a consultant that says, you know what, Ernie's, let's say that you've got X amount of buildings, right, or X amount of rooms, or it's this type of classroom. Is there a document you can put together that is the start of, or the germination of a needs analysis to help them in times like this, where they can, oh, quick, this is cool, this will give us a running start, or is it really just you start from scratch every time?
Well, personally, I have a needs analysis template that I use with clients. It's I need to really do kind of face-to-face or phone conversations with them. It's not something they fill out like a form, because I really need to dig deeper than what they're going to give me initially if they just try to fill out some sort of a form or questionnaire that I have. And I bring in that first meeting, I bring in a project timeline too that gets real granular and shows them every single aspect of an AV installation from the day we sign the contract with me all the way through system commissioning and closeout. So it really puts things in perspective for them when they can see how many small little things have to go into a successful install, and because most people don't realize all those little granular aspects of it that exist, and that's exactly what's happening right now to me. So I have a big meeting tomorrow with the client. So.
Tim, let me address this one as well. I would not want a consultant to hand me a pre-built scope for a room that I hand to an integrator just because I'm in a hurry. I want it custom designed for my needs and my space. I would not feel good if Mike came to me as a consultant and said, here, just use this, and this will get most of what you need. I'm not going to think I got my money's worth out of dealing with the consultant, and I probably would not call that consultant again. I want one who cares about my needs and what's going on my campus. Now, on that, yes, we have a scope of work pre-built for a lot of our rooms because we know that we need all of these rooms done about the same way, know what features they're going to need, and if we're going to upgrade them, this is what's going to happen. But I'm not paying someone to just hand that over to hand me a boilerplate. It's something we've developed, and like I said, we do most of our work in-house, so it's a scope of work for us. I did learn that I did not use a consultant on the project that you worked with me on, Tim. And the first time we put it out to bid, I go back to Mike's comment about vague scope of work. They didn't use it. The vendors didn't come back and say this is vague, it's not going to work this good. They decided to cover everything, and it came in way over. I got like 6 bids from different AV integrators. They were all way outside my budget scope. We took it. We worked with a consultant, paid them to review our documents. They helped us rewrite them. This was before Mike was a consultant, by the way. But they helped us rewrite it. I got exactly the same thing that I thought I was getting from the first scope, and the bids came in at 50 to 60% of where they were on the vape scopes. And we didn't take anything out of the scope. We didn't change any of the hardware. We didn't make any changes other than tighten up the scope, as our consultant put it. We paid them to review the document. They helped us rewrite it, and that was the consultant's part of this project. And I think it was money very well spent. And like I said, we were unable to do the project the first time we tried to do it because the bids came in so high. But we had plenty of money when they came in the second time because we used the consultant properly and did not have the vagueness of the first scope. So you pay a consultant for a reason, and they're worth paying for.
Well, let me put kind of a little dollars and cents, and this is not a commercial for a consultant, and Mike wasn't the consultant, so let me, because I've seen the scope, and it is incredibly detailed. Basically, what Ernie's saying is he had X amount of dollars. He paid the consultant a little bit over here, and I do mean a little bit in the grand scheme of things. And the amount they saved on their final bill was much more than what they paid that consultant. So it's worth it, people. If you've got it, it's worth it. So,
yes,
Mr. Brown, what do you say about Jennifer's pain points for the end of the year purchasing?
I think it was a good article, and I think she made some excellent points, and it's very accurate, and it was not something we had a problem with. And it wasn't something we had a problem with because we did everything in-house, and so we planned everything in advance. We were doing classrooms during the quarter just by avoiding or just by scheduling some open time in the rooms. We're doing, I think it was 6 rooms a quarter for a while, building them up. And when it came to summer, we literally would sit down every year with our budget, and we wouldn't just budget the year, but we had the chunk of money from, let's say, this year's budget that was going to go to the beginning of summer, and then we had the balance of the summer projects which were going on to the next year's budget. And what we did with that chunk for early summer was basically to buy a lot of the long lead time items, buy things like big screens and anything that was going to take a long time to get, that had to be ordered early, had to be ordered here in like April or May to have it lined up in time, or for stuff that we're doing particularly early in the summer. And then everything else fell onto the next year's budget. So that was a very, very guarded, very reserved chunk of money, and it made the whole thing kind of moot for us to a large extent.
Okay, no, that's
well, if I can speak up again, what we have done is we got some one-time money several years ago, and we used that to kind of cheat the system, if you will. We bought the next year's equipment with that fund. With those funds, we had enough to do most of what we had budgeted. So we did that. So then when our new money became available in July, we pushed that. We started spending it in January for the next year. So our, the money that we get each July 1st now, we use for the next summer's projects, basically. We don't generally have enough of a Christmas break, winter break, to do major installs. So we push those off to the summer, but we start making purchases January, February, March, get things in, start building racks, and then when the day after graduation, we start tearing down classrooms for the summer and rebuilding them.
The other thing we did, our method was not foolproof. The other thing we would do is that, if we had some money left over going into the end of the fiscal, we'd buy projectors. We would know what we were doing as far as projector upgrades, and okay, hey, we got some money, let's buy 20 new projectors, and we'll try and do that during the summer. That's always an easy way for us in higher ed to avoid that sort of thing, because we're always replacing projectors.
Yeah, absolutely. Ernie, just real quickly, how would one go about getting a magic stash of money to get a heads up?
I mean, this was some one-time funding. I don't know where it came from. I was just told it was available. So we spent it, and like I said, we've tried to stay ahead that way for most of these projects.
Just out of curiosity, was it anywhere near the end of President Clinton's tenure as presidency, and maybe he shifted some magic money?
No.
Sometimes those questions you
Arkansas
don't
joke.
ask.
Come on. Very nice. Very well done. All right. There are two really cool, famous people that are in Sound and Communications this month. One is Dave Labuscus, the head of Infocom. The other one is this guy right here. His name is Mike Tomei. See what I did there? You and Dave Labuscus, baby. You and
Always.
Dave Labuscus.
We're always mentioned in the same sentence. Yeah.
Well, you are. You're both. I got nothing there. I was going to go down a weird path, and I wasn't going to do it. If you're watching the video, I'm hoping that this is on the screen now. Getting ahead in higher ed, pleasing AV support staff is key. So what's interesting here, first of all, Mike used to be AV support staff, right? He worked for Harvard, worked for Ithaca, not exactly chump change there when it comes to the world of higher ed. But what's interesting is as a consultant now, Mike's talking about serviceability and making sure you can communication. So this is gonna be an interesting little 5-10 minutes here, kids. Mike, we're gonna start with you and just talk about the article for a little bit, and then we're gonna bring in the AV support staff to give you their feedback on your article. So put your iron pants on. Get ready for some honest feedback. But first, let me seriously talk about, as a consultant, as trying to make sure that these people, these AV professionals, have what they need. I mean, let's be honest. God love them, and it's yeoman's work. It's something that I've done and everybody on this call has done for years. You don't get a whole lot of respect or help from the faculty. Sometimes you have staff and people above you who don't understand what it is that you do.
Sometimes?
I said sometimes.
That's what I mean. You said sometimes?
Yes, sometimes. That's why folks like integrators and consultants and other industry professionals are important, because that's their support, right? That's where they get their, you're doing a good job type thing. So, Mike, from your standpoint, how do we make sure that we're supporting these folks?
Yeah, so I wrote this article targeting integrators and consultants, since those are the biggest readers of this publication. And it's some tips I put together with for working in the higher ed market, like you said, keeping the AV support staff happy. And a few months ago, I saw somebody on LinkedIn said that every line in a bid specification is an install that went wrong. And every line in this article that I wrote is a lesson that I learned from working in higher ed AV installs. So I really kind of broke it down into a few different bullet points there. One of them is serviceability. I expressed the need for designing and installing with future serviceability in mind to keep the AV support people happy. I've seen way too many projectors or AV racks in locations that just are not easy to get to, and when you have a problem and you have to run into a room and troubleshoot, and you cannot get to what you need to get to, it's not a fun time. No. Standardization. I always harp on this one. Following the school's developed standards documentation. Greg can talk about this based on his blog post recently. But I feel like that way too many integrators and consultants dive headfirst into these system designs or installations and don't pay any attention to any established standards documentation that might exist at the school already. And if the AV support staff isn't really involved right from the get-go with these projects, then the consultants or integrators might get halfway through it and then all of a sudden realize they're designing a system that does not adhere to any standards that the school has already established. Project timeline, paying attention to when an AV support person says to you the first day of classes is this day and the system has to be done and tested by this day. That's not like a fluid thing. You can't just say, well, we didn't do it, so that's the way it goes. I've had that happen way too many times. At least give them warning that you're approaching the end of your install and it's not going to happen by the first day of class.
Real quickly on that, how soon? Like, do you want a week's notice? Do you want 2 weeks' notice?
More than that. So if you have to go to the registrar and say, you got to move a class, you have to move all the classes out of this room, it's just not going to be done, and it's going to be in no condition to be used for a few weeks. The registrar, I mean, you could give them months' notice and they're not going to be happy, but if you give them a few weeks' notice, it's probably good enough for them to hopefully find something else. If it's something like Ithaca College's campus, where every class was totally filled all day, every day, then they just cannot find a place to put them. So it's just not a good situation in general. But the more notice, the better, for sure. And I've had way too many integrators that either don't realize that they're ending the end of the timeline and it's not going to happen, or they just don't want to tell us, and then we have to find out the hard way what's happening. Another bullet point was professionalism. This kind of sounds really basic, but image is everything with colleges, and I feel like a lot of integrators don't really stress professionalism with their install technicians when they're on campus, and I've seen a few get kicked off of campus by project managers because they are not appropriate around students or professors or anyone that's on campus. You know, you bring a tour group by and you have a bunch of really loud, obnoxious AV technicians in a room. It's probably not a very good thing. So I've seen that happen a lot, and that kind of goes hand in hand with client interaction. A lot of integrators, I always warn them, you know, professors will pop their head in while your install technicians are in the room doing their work, and those professors will ask for changes to be made on the fly to those designs. And don't commit to anything, and explain to those technicians the chain of command and who they should go to if they're approached, because college professors can be really, let's say, pushy sometimes. And yeah, and I've walked in to test a system and been surprised and had a technician say, well, this instructor came in and they wanted us to move the cameras over here, so we just did it. It's like, wow, okay, not good. So now we need to redo all that work. So I've seen that happen many times. And then my final point in the article was closeout documentation. AV support staff loves really great as-built drawings. They always want the control system programming code right after the install, system verification results, and like we were talking about before, inventory info and IP tables and passwords and all of that, because they're probably going to have to troubleshoot that system pretty soon after the start of classes, and without that information, they're just flying blind. They probably weren't involved with the entire system design, and without those as-built drawings, they just don't know what that system consists of. So those were the big points, and every single one of them I learned the hard way on installs in the past, and figured it might be a good time to make a list of them, and hope that some people actually listen and adhere to them.
All right. We're going to get to them, right? Brian, we'll start with you. Is Mike on point with these points?
Oh, Mike is perfectly on point, and as soon as we as soon as we come up with the comic book version of this article, I think some integrators might get something out of it.
Yeah. Oh boy. You're saying there are pictures needed?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest revelation was there in his opening statement where he talked about integrators being able to read.
I don't think I quite said it like that.
Well, you implied it, and it was certainly an epiphany to me, because I certainly have not seen evidence based on any of the work I've seen here recently. I had little or no faith in integrators to begin with, and the most recent project I went through was a stark dose of reality.
You need better integrators in California, dude.
Yeah, apparently so. When it's the warm weather, they just don't die off like they do in the cold climates. They continue to thrive and reproduce, I guess. Despite a lack of any evolutionary capability. Anyway, what was the question?
I don't know.
No, it's a great article. I think it's funny that the line you mentioned there was actually off of a picture I posted off of this project that I referenced that this last integrator did.
Yes, you're right. It was
filled with incompetent work of all flavors. So
Was that the
no,
one where the projector was hung in between the fan blades?
no, that was not mine. This was the one where we used one of those FSR gearboxes, external surface mount buildings that go on the ceiling. Excellent external box, 4-rack unit. And so the integrator, part of their scope of work was to provide cables. Well, unfortunately, they provided cables that don't let you put the cover on the damn thing once they put the cables on. They used like, not to diss Extron, but they used like the heavy duty Extron cables, which have like a 6 or 8 inch bend radius, and
With the big thick suckers?
yes, the big thick suckers.
Yeah.
And silly us, when we mocked it up, we mocked it up with, I think Kramer's or something like that, with much more conventional. Anybody's brand would work if they were much more conventional cables. And there isn't a run longer than 20 feet in this room, so it doesn't require exceptionally long cables. And they just put in these cables that it's like, well, how are you going to put the box on or the cover on? It's like, well, I guess we could bend them down really hard.
Shoo.
Yeah, that was kind of the suggestion. That was kind of the suggestion. I asked, why'd you use those cables? I said, well, that's what we stock.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, there's a great big job walk this week, and guess who's not on it?
Yep.
All right, Mr. Mr. Ernie, what do you? Any more advice for Mike or anybody else reading the article?
I think it's a great article. I agree with Mike. I can see all the different failures that we've seen here written into this. How to avoid those. I think he's really hit the nail on the head here. Now, I will tell you, you talk about listening and communicating with your client. I met an instructor from another health science facility at a conference I went to a couple of months ago. And he said, I really wish we could do, and he gave me a list of things that he can't seem to do in his classrooms. And it's stuff that we do all the time. It was, connecting 2 classrooms together and how he wants them to work. And he said, I said, we do that all the time. He said, I wish you'd come talk to our IT people. Well, when I got back here, I had an invitation to go speak at that campus, and I called to let him know, and he set up a meeting with me, between me and the associate dean of his college, and she's responsible for all the technology. She's very technology savvy, and the 2 leading people in classroom technology support in their group. The instructor was not there, but he arranged the meeting, and I went and I talked with them the day before my presentation. And I found out why they're not providing the support that he wants. They had no idea what he wanted to do. So he tells somebody from another school that his people can't take care of him, but he hadn't asked for this support in the classrooms. And they said, we can do all that stuff. Now, we ended up making a very productive meeting out of it. I talked to them about some technology we're using. And, I'm going to be communicating back and forth with them, letting them know what we've done and how they can bring that in. But, if you're going to have a consultant come in, know what they're going to, know what you're wanting to ask for, and, talk to your in-house people as well. And then everybody can come together, and you'll have a much more successful teaching experience if you work with all the people.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't know, they can't help you unless they know what
Right.
what you need. And that actually
Go
ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, on a related note to what Ernie just said, whenever I train end users on systems, I always tell them, this is back when I was working in higher ed AV support, I would always tell them, the second something doesn't work for you, tell us. Nothing kills me more than going to talk to a professor and they say, oh, well, this hasn't worked for a year now, and every time I come in here, the same thing is broken. Well, when did you report it? Oh, I haven't. I just assumed it was always broken. It's like, boy, we probably could have fixed it in like 15 or 20 minutes. Just tell us. So, yeah.
Yeah, I could take that all the way back to 35 years ago when I started. I would be walking to the cafeteria, and an instructor would stop me in the hall. One day last week, I was in one of the classrooms on the ground floor of this building, and the projector lamp went out. Have you fixed that yet? Those don't help. We put a help button on the wall in every classroom now, even the ones that don't have an interactive panel, with displays back. If you just press that help button, you're going to get the technician within a minute or two in your room saying, what's the problem? How can I help? That's all there is to it. And we offer training to the faculty on how to do that. How to push that.
On how to push the help button?
Yes. It's fairly new in the room, so they're not. We make sure they know where it is and what's going to happen when they push it.
Yeah.
We don't teach them how to put their thumb on it, but we tell them, why that button is there and what happens when you push it, and it's going to get you a technician.
How many of those? I was going to say, how many of those calls are, the room is too hot, and do you have any bottled water? That's always
We'll take care of that. I don't mind that.
Yeah.
Our deal is we do everything we can to make the teaching experience and the learning experience successful. If they're not comfortable, we'll make the call to the engineering office and get the temperature changed. If you need a bottle of water, we'll go get you one. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that too loud. I don't advertise that part, but
right.
They call us if the temperature's not right or if there's water dripping out of the ceiling tiles. We'll get it taken care of. If there's stains on the carpet, tell me. We'll make the call. We don't mind making the call and taking ownership of the problem, but we've got to know it exists.
Yeah, right. That right there is key, Ernie, is knowing the problem exists, and that's actually a really great attitude to have, because there are some. I had colleagues in the past that would take the opposite end of that attitude. Is, you know what? Unless it's audio or video, it's not my problem, right? If you have the blue screen of death, too bad. I'm not a computer guy, right? It's too cold in there. Sorry, here's the number to, and they would, if they would do it, they would say, here's the number to facilities.
Yeah. Now, if I hear my guys doing that, I stop them and say, no, you make the call, and then you follow up. That way, we get a work order number, even on temperature being out or a lamp being out, on the ceiling, where a student can't see to take their notes. We'll take care of that.
Yeah. Greg, you were saying something, but you're muted there, sir.
We see your lips moving.
We see your lips moving, brother, but we got nothing coming out.
I just need to turn my microphone back on. There, go ahead, make the line about it being some of the most intelligent stuff I've said all day.
It probably was.
I think that was the joke last time I did that.
Is there an AV guy available?
You're right. Of all the people having trouble with a microphone, we put in a ring down phone in all the rooms here, and now we have gotten to the point where we have somebody who literally most of their time is spent doing nothing but sort of shepherding all of the calls for issues that aren't ours, lights, temperature, broken seats, things like that, and sending them to facilities and also following up on facilities. We had a huge issue where the trouble ticket gets given to the guys in the truck, and they walk out to the class. It's like, oh, there's a broken chair. Oh, okay, I don't see one. Signs it off and goes home and moves on to the next ticket. And we really have worked very hard to put some accountability into that loop because there wasn't any. And it's kind of that is the world you will find yourself in if you end up having some sort of people can call for anything sort of method, but it is really something you have to provide.
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, on that note, gentlemen, we're going to wrap up today. Mr. Greg Brown, that gentleman right there, is from UCLA. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
And where can people find you or your ramblings and writings?
Actually, I'm. Mike made a quick mention to it. I am in the middle of a 4-part blog over at All Voices on classroom standards for higher education.
Very nice.
Episode 3 comes out, I think, this week sometime.
All right, very cool, very cool. All right, Mr. Tomei, where can people find you? Obviously, they can find your writings at Sound and Communications this month, but where else?
Yeah, my website is probably the best place. It's tomeiav.com or LinkedIn. I'm on there pretty often.
All right, very good. And last but not least,
Yep.
Mr. Ernley Bailey from UAMS. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. You can find me on LinkedIn also.
Yeah, you guys use the LinkedIn a lot more than I do, so. Also, if you are interested and you are going to InfoComm next month, you can check this very program out live and in person, 10 o'clock Eastern at booth 6667. Booth 6667 will be doing this show, as well as a number of others. We'll be doing AV Week between 2 and 4 on Friday. I know that George is doing a live, his staging an event show. So yeah, come by, check it out. We have lip balm to give away to folks. We're also going to be registering folks for a free pair of Momentum headphones, the wireless ones. So we'll do that. So, but go by the website if you would, avnation.tv, avnation.tv. You will find this program and a we have obviously our weekly one. We've got a new projector podcast coming up, a new lighting guy podcast. So all kinds of cool stuff. All of it's at the website, avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. This has been EdTech.